Hey guys and girls, Board now back with you. On this video I will be talking about the 10th episode of the first season of Ozark. The episode is called The Toll and it is the season 1 finale, so full spoilers from the start of this review. Jason Bateman directs this episode, as he has at least a couple of others, and this is a really strong way to end the season. Everything sort of cranks up and builds to a really dramatic finale, and by the end it definitely sets up some juicy things for season 2, which I'm excited to get into. And it's been an up and down season. You know, I have had mixed feelings on the show at times in this first season. I feel maybe it's the sort of slightly rough first season and it will straighten itself out moving forward. But overall, I think it has been a good first season, but obviously certain things could have been better, but it at least ends on a high, which I think it definitely does. I think most things in this episode are sort of firing on all cylinders, and there's sort of important character stuff for things moving forward. So it deals very well with the fallout from Russ and Boyd being killed at the end of the episode. It was revealed to be Ruth because she couldn't go through with killing Marty, and so she actually killed Russ and Boyd to save him. And one thing that shows is like the bond with her and Marty, and how he has become like a father figure for her, partly because of how he's helped her out getting a job and showing her the ropes and all that. And it's sort of like the father figure than she's never had. And once again, we see her father briefly in this episode. I think it's at the end of the episode. He's up for parole and stuff, and he is one of the weaker characters in my opinion. I think he's a little bit of a stereotype, and I just find his presence quite annoying. I can see the point of his plot, but I'm not sure he's totally needed. He does feel a bit of an added on character, which we could have done without. Certainly not having as much of a plot as it, and he doesn't have that much in the first season, but I guess it's obvious moving forward he's going to be a bigger character. So that's probably one small complaint, but as I was saying, they do deal well with the fallout. Wendy and Marty, who I feel a big theme for the birds in this episode is largely damage control and trying to negotiate things, trying to just keep their family together and safe, but also figuring out the best way to handle everyone. And obviously they have grown fond of Ruth, so you would like to think some of this sympathy we see at the start of the episode is sincere, but at the same time they've probably got one mind on just keeping everyone calm so that they take them flowers, and Ruth is obviously more receptive, but Wyatt is having none of it. He kind of gives them the cold shoulder, and that's because he thinks Russ and Boyd were killed by Marty. To Wyatt, he seems the obvious suspect. Now, obviously, as I said in the last review, this is a big secret that Ruth now has hanging over her, and at some point, you've got to feel she's gonna, tell the truth to Wyatt, be guilted into telling the truth. And that's obviously going to be a big moment, but it's a big character thing for Ruth, her saving Marty last time, but now the consequences of that. And it's probably one of those things where, because of the nature of Russ and Boyd as characters, you didn't really feel that badly for them, but you obviously feel badly for Wyatt because losing his father, his brother, because he's definitely a sympathetic character. Now, one of the big storylines in this episode, which leads to a lot of tension and sort of leads to the birds considering their future, is Mason's storyline, because at the start of the episode he goes to the Snails and he says he can't do it anymore, he can't preach on the lake. And it's a weird sort of scene where Jacob seems to go along with it and seems to say, okay, I respect your decision, I'm not going to try and force you to go back on it. And Jacob is this weird sort of character who is very intimidating and has a presence to him, but at the same time, in his own sort of way, he does seem to have principles and scruples. But it's almost like in this scene you can feel something is coming, that there will be like consequences for Mason no longer preaching on the lake. And again, I think Peter Mullin is so good in the scene in conveying, the threat without almost making one. So very good stuff. And what it leads to is something which has been threatened earlier in the season, but it was actually threatened to the birds from the Snails about, how they, if things didn't go their way, if they didn't do what they wanted, then they would cut out the wife, as in Mason's wife Grace, her like unborn baby. So later in the episode, Mason comes home and he can't find Grace, but he does find a baby, a newborn baby, and the implication is that they've lived up to their word and they've actually killed Grace and they've cut the baby out of her. And I think Mason is pretty quick to think that as well. So the drama of this is very well done, because there's a lot of suspense to it, where you question for a long time where she actually is. Is she still alive? Because that crossed my mind, because there was a long time of question, and a long time of not seeing her. You don't see the body, and you never see the body, not in this episode anyway. Then it sort of leads you to maybe suspect that she could still be alive, but the fallout from it changes the whole dynamics of the episode, because Marty is like really frantic and really, goes over there and is also trying to like question the Snails about it, and they're like giving him the hard shoulder, and they're almost putting this on him. It's like, well, you've got to fix this, you've got to help us out. At the same time, you've got like Dell's henchmen, like, sniffing around, putting pressure on them. And one of the really good scenes, which really builds to a head, is when he's in the house, sort of, to like threaten not the Snails, the birds, and he actually looks on the phone and gets information, and Jonah comes in, and of course a big thing with him this season is that he's learned how to shoot with help from Buddy, and has sort of gone down that path, much to his like parents' chagrin, and he seems ready to defend his family, and they're all there in the house, and Jonah comes out with a gun and seems about to shoot Garcia, his name is, and sort of calls his bluff, but he's ready to do it, but it's revealed that there's actually no bullets in the gun. But then Buddy comes out of nowhere and he's got a gun of his own. So Buddy's another character who has had a nice character arc over the course of the season. He started off as this weird old man who they moved in with, and at times has been quite an unpleasant character, but in some ways just very set in his ways is a lot of that, but definitely has had an arc where he's grown more closer to the birds. Wendy, he's had some nice scenes with, and obviously, although you question some of the stuff he's like been teaching Jonah, they have grown closer, and this is a good scene for Buddy because he helps the birds out of a jam, and they decide to escape, and he ends up shooting Garcia, which again is sort of adding to their problems again, because obviously Dale's gonna come looking for like his henchman, but needs must. It saves the birds at that point, and they escape. And because of what's happening with Mason and all the tension with with Dale and with the Snells and stuff, Marty and the family make a plan to actually escape, to go back to Ozark. Was it Ozark? It's either Ozark or sort of. No, I think it's somewhere else, because they might know to look for them in not Ozark, where they're from, Chicago. But anyway, they make a plan to escape, and Marty actually calls his business partner, his sort of private guy back in Chicago, and he actually sets them up with new identities. So there's actually like a funny little like false name which Jonah is like given, which is pretty funny. But anyway, yeah, they plan to make an escape. So Wendy and the kids have already left at some point, and they're just waiting for Marty to meet them later on. He's going to tie up some loose ends, but in the long run, they end up coming back, and the decision is made that it's best to stay there for now on. And the reason they decide to stay in Ozark is they start negotiating a deal to set up their casino. Like, they sort of figure then this is something they could possibly do, and it could be the ideal way to launder money. And they've had this idea of setting it up and maybe escaping later, but for the time being, that they stay there and they negotiate. They're sort of because Dell shows up like at the end of the episode, and then negotiating with him and with the Snells, because it's sort of on the Snells' land, and they've obviously got drugs they can provide them. So they're sort of trying to, I think, to please the Snells because of what's gone down. They're trying to like include them in the deal and to make a deal. It's a great final sort of big set piece of the episode, and this is probably the moment which confirms that Darlene's actually the more like loose cannon of her and Jacob. He's obviously very calm and calculated in many ways, and at certain point has had a bit more like principles to some of his stuff, and we've got a sense that she is sort of unhinged and is dangerous, and maybe is the one you overlook at your peril. But for a lot of the season, you've still been led to believe that Jacob is like the ringleader, and he maybe is calling the shots. But certainly stuff in this episode maybe suggests that might not be the case. But what happens here eventually is things are getting out of hand and tempers are flaring, and there's like an insult made, a racist sort of insult from Darlene, and then Dale replies with one of his own, and whoa, Darlene just shoots him out of nowhere with a shotgun. He goes flying. In fact, his face is pretty much blown off. It's a great visual, but what a kick-ass moment. And I won't be missing Dale. I'll say that. He's probably not the most interesting character, so... But it again brings things to a head, and it creates more problem because, of course, them being the Keitel, they will have someone else to replace Dale, and they're gonna obviously wonder, exactly where he is, which is gonna be a big plot at the start of season 2. You've got to imagine. But for the time being, they cover it up and they bury him, and they obviously agree on this casino deal. But killing off Dale really puts Marty in a bit of a jam, and Wendy and the children obviously come back and they decide to take the risk. As far as Rachel in the episode, there is one thing with her, which is then she at some point finds like part of the 50 million stashed away, and she takes it and leaves basically. So you sort of figure she's going to be seen again at some point, but it's one of those things. I mean, she's obviously been put through the ringer in this whole thing and has been used a little bit, and obviously has been largely innocent. So you do feel for her, and you sort of feel, yeah, why not get your share of the money and leave town, which she does, but you're sort of guessing you'll see her again at some point. And the ending does a thing with all the characters, and there's an intense scene with Mason, and where he actually goes out and, being like a preacher, religious and stuff, but he sort of baptizes his son, and the way the scene is shot in this very slow sort of dramatic way, it does make it look like he might actually kill his son. He might sort of sacrifice him, and almost like he's too depressed to face being a father. So you get that like extended take where he like puts him into the water for what seems like an unnaturally long time, and then pulls him out. It's a little bit melodramatic, I will say that, which some scenes in this show have been, and it might have been a tad too far. I'm guessing maybe it's done for effect, and that's probably a slow-mo where he's maybe not in the water as long as you might think, or maybe, it's just in his head more so. It's hard to really read it, but you can see what they're going for with like the imagery and stuff, and the religious sort of meaning. So Mason obviously in a very bad place at the end of the season, which is understandable, but we get a wrap around and see the various characters where they're at. And obviously there's lots of like meaty possibilities now moving forward with this casino deal with the Snells and the Birds, who have a very like obviously fractured relationship and sort of strange bedfellows in this business partnership. So it only promises to get better from here, and you've got the fallout from Dell being shot as well. So interesting stuff with Ruth and her family too. So lots to be excited about for season 2. But that's my season 1 review, my final review of the season, The Toll. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below if you've been following my reviews or if you've been watching season 1 recently. I am of course building up to the end of April, where season 4, or the second part of season 4, will come out, so I'll be back with more Ozark again soon. You can also support me on Patreon, which is patreon.com/boardnow, for some extra perks. You can get added content for as little as $1 per month, including X-Files commentaries and other like big Netflix shows which I've done or been doing. I'm doing Stranger Things at the moment, so I've just started season 2 of that, and I'm working up to the next season, the new season, Stranger Things 4, which starts in May. And also me and Rachel, my regular sort of co-host, we not too long ago did The Haunting of Hill House, the whole of that season, another big Netflix show. So you can find all those reviews up on the channel. But I'll be back with more Ozark soon. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.